So, any thoughts on your end about like what what you want to do with the project going forward, or?
Well, not everything that you wrote in the first proposal is already clear to me. So, oh, I think Bhavik is there.
Okay, hi. Here he's coming up. All right, there we go. Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi. Sorry, I'm a little technical difficulties.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we're waiting for Huajian. Okay. So, how are you, Bhavik?
Things have been good. Things have been good.
Good.
Did I miss something?
Oh no, we're just kind of waiting for people to show up.
I see. I see.
You're only 2 minutes late, so it's not that late.
Yeah.
So should we perhaps start with introductions or something?
Yeah, I mean, we can. I don't know if we want to wait until any more people show up, but we could. I guess we could start with introductions. So I'm Bradley Alicea, and I am. I kind of work. I work at the Open Worm Foundation, so I work independently of a university. And I've been involved in the eLife Ambassadors program this is my 2nd year. Last year I joined and I ended up getting involved in the Reproducibility for Everyone initiative. And that's where a lot of this stuff kind of came from. We're trying to really scale up that initiative, but also this is kind of a spin-off initiative of that, the thing I'm proposing today. And so I have a lot of interests that bridge computational and biological science, and I'm interested in seeing what people want to do. I like the eLife Ambassadors Initiative because it gives people a lot of freedom to collaborate and come up with new things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice that you already had some experience with this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my name is Marije Verhage, and I'm from the Netherlands. And I'm actually quite a different field, I guess, than most eLife ambassadors because I'm in the field of psychology, and I study parent-child relationships. So it's really a different type of topic than most things that I saw on the Discourse website. But I think I joined because I like the idea of open science and of improving scientific conduct. And I think that's so multidisciplinary that it doesn't really matter in which field you are exactly. So so that's why I joined. And I like data sharing. Most of my studies are with a large group of people who share data. As someone who has some experience with data sharing, I know how difficult it is to get data in the same format. So that's why I mentioned that I would like to restructure, like make a common data format so people can merge data sets more easily.
Yeah.
Because it's such a large proportion of meta-analysis time, just search looking for common structure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. I'm Bhavik. I'm a postdoc here with the VC Institute over at Harvard Medical School. our day-to-day life is focused. I'm really sorry. The reason why I was late and I'm a little bit distracted, I don't know if you guys saw me put an ice pack on my hand, is this morning when I was coming in, our bus got into an accident and I just, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so our day-to-day work is focused on sort of DNA nanotechnology and its applications across various fields and so on. The reason why A, I got excited in the ambassadors program, and B, specifically in this initiative, is the two of you mentioned. There's a lot of non-standard data formats in which our results have been presented. In particular, since I personally deal with imaging data and so forth, I have special ability towards figuring it out from an imaging perspective. But more broadly, whether it's RNA-seq data, whether it's genomics data, whether it's imaging data formats and so on and so forth, there's a lot of different standards in which data is presented. And so through this initiative and broadly through the ambassadors program, the hope is to sort of come together at a consensus framework that people can follow. It would be fantastic if the data could be reused and especially for meta research and so on. But I think even for more junior folks like me starting out, just the fact that if they could read papers and figure out what the data was claiming right off the bat instead of worrying about the different formats and so on, that would be really helpful, and that's kind of my motivation participating in this initiative.
Okay, that sounds good. So I have an agenda here for today. I don't know how much. I just kind of put some stuff on the agenda, so I don't know how much we'll get to if we want to talk about different things other than what I have on the agenda, because I just kind of put it together based on our conversations. So here's the.
Because some of the things that were in your initial proposal were still a bit unclear to me. Perhaps because it was something that came up last year and we weren't involved yet. So I was wondering whether you could say something about the coalition report that you were talking about, and what your aim of the proposal was.
Okay, so let me bring up the proposal. Do you have a, let me see. Let me see if I can find it here. I'll bring it up. I have it in the, actually, it should be in the discourse.
There it is, yeah.
So, let's go to the... Alright, so I'm going to share my screen here, I think. Would be the best way to do this.
You got it in the chat? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, I can put a link in the chat. I don't know if it actually... Alright. I put a link in the chat as well. You have to scroll up to the top of the conversation to see it. Okay. So... Alright, so you can see the data reusability for discovery. Is that what's coming up on my screen? Okay.
Yeah.
So, what is the main problem your initiative addresses? This initiative addresses the need for a set of community standards and a set of formal practices for data reuse. Data reuse has two components, and then the creation of secondary and tertiary data sets for the creation of new insights that can only be made with non-primary data collection. So kind of defining data reuse there, but we can add to that if people want to do that. I don't know if can you edit this this post, because I don't know if I'm the only one who is able to edit it. If you go down to the bottom of this message, there should be like a pencil.
Oh, because of your screen sharing, I can't. Oh wait, yeah.
Okay.
No, I can't edit that.
Okay. Well, alright, well, I'll talk about afterwards how we can, like, collaboratively edit. So, but anyways, let me go through it, and then I'll, like, point out, like, what I, is kind of thinking with what I put down, and then we'll talk about, how we want to do, what kinds of things we want to change or add, and then I'll show you how we might collaborate on the, on the materials. So this is so this first part, this is open if you want to put in more sort of ideas about this. I know both of you are interested in data format, and that doesn't mention anything about it here.
No,
so
but I think it does fit already.
What was that?
I think it does fit what
okay.
because to be able to reuse data, it would be easy if you have a common data structure.
Okay. All right. I mean, we can even put in anything. It depends if you guys think that we need to be more explicit.
Yeah, well, you say it addresses the need for a set of community standards, so that's already a bit. That's how I read this anyway.
Okay.
But perhaps that's my mistake.
Well, I mean, then the question is like, what do we want to? I mean, community standards are usually like, we have to be kind of explicit about the standards, or we have to kind of like think about how we want to produce the standards. So like, a format is really just a set of standards, and in general, I think community standards can be useful not just for formatting but for other types of things. So yeah, we might be more explicit there, but okay, that's that part. Mm-hmm. Then how will your initiative function? So this is, in this case, newcomers to this initiative will, one, gain exposure to the practice of data recycling, and I have some slides on that, which is actually there are course materials that I've linked to in here that kind of go through some of the ins and outs of that. And or two, work towards building a reproducible infrastructure. So that's, again, we could, this is the community standards part. Other things that we can do that will work towards that end. So, okay, we will work as a distributed group and focus our efforts on a data reuse architecture, course materials, and a set of data structures, best practices that can ease implementation of data sharing.
Yeah. Okay. And I was just wondering what course you are talking about.
Okay, so I guess this is
for everyone course? Or?
Well, there's a module within that that's I don't know if I have a link to it here.
Well, yeah, I think you have included a link on the bottom of it, right?
Yeah, I do have a link on the bottom. I put them in.
Yeah, but I was just wondering where the link is from. What's it part of?
Well, this is so if we follow the link, it goes to this module that I've been working on. This is actually something that I contributed to reproducibility for everyone. So this is a module which is reusefulness of data. That's the name of it, but it's basically the same thing. And so the idea is to present materials here that would help people to go through and learn something about data reuse. And so, it's set up in GitHub, which is, I'll tell you about it a little bit later. But it's basically, you have the introduction here, which is a description of why it's important. And then there's a 14-slide lecture here, which I actually have the slides set up here. So there's a link to the slides.
Yeah, I saw those, yeah.
Okay. And then that goes through a lot of the basics about it doesn't talk about formatting and things that are, it just gives a very high level overview. And then
it's part of the reproducibility for everyone course that is part of the ambassador program.
Well, so the reproducibility for everyone initiative has a main talk, which is about 100 slides. And then, but these aren't in those slides. There's a very small part of that talk, sort of on data reuse, but it doesn't really get into much detail. It's like a slide or two. This is an attempt to kind of go deeper than that.
Yeah.
And so you're drilling down into that one area.
And it would be available to the community ambassadors, or would it be available more broadly?
Well, yes, it would be available more broadly. Reproducibility for everyone is actually very broad in terms of who's using it. So the idea behind that initiative is that you would have anyone in the world, in maybe any field in the world, although it's focused mostly, the people who are, the head people are doing it, they focus mostly on plant biology and, other sub areas of biology. But anyone could take those materials that focus, pretty generally on reproducibility and use them however they see fit. So the idea is you can take these materials and you can mix them, you can use parts of them if you want. So it's, it's pretty flexible in that way.
Okay.
So that's the ethos. And then this is so this is sort of a contribution to that, but it sort of stands alone in that there's a, it's also something that, we can develop sort of as a standalone resource so that people see this, they can learn, they can get pretty deep into data reuse where there aren't that many resources. So, we kind of go through data reuse as a process, sort of how you can use secondary, you can use secondary data, you can take data from a primary source, people produce a data set, they maybe share the data with the community, and then people can take those data and use them for their own means, and they produce what's called a tertiary data set. And so you can walk people through that, and that's all in the slideshow. And then, as I've outlined these points, these are all in the lecture, and then they kind of give, and then some of this stuff hasn't been completed yet. So maintaining context and transform data, building communities around access to data. Now those are two things that are, maybe need more detail. People have built communities around access to data, such as databases or, even professional organizations. And so I'm not really sure what that's going to look like yet in terms of how to introduce people to those concepts. But those are, now we're getting pretty deep into the whole, concept.
So may I jump in and ask a couple questions at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one component is to make people aware of the data reusability needs and so forth. But in this setup, is the data sharing expected to be peer to peer, or what's the approach in terms of sharing primary or secondary data?
Well, it's pretty broad. We don't have, basically the idea is to introduce people to how to do it, but, we haven't really gotten, mainly the idea is to focus on just kind of sharing maybe to a repository. Peer-to-peer, I didn't really thought too much about peer-to-peer sharing, but it's certainly a thing that could be discussed or that could be added to the lesson. But I mean, like, the mode is like agnostic here. I mean, it's really up to people who want to contribute materials. If there's something like in terms of peer-to-peer data sharing that's interesting that, you know, maybe people could learn from, we could add, that would be good to have.
Right. And then maybe a follow-up to that is if the data is being shared via a repository, is it again agnostic to formats, or are there suggested guidelines about the format of the data or the expectations in terms of metadata, or sort of a community developed set of norms, guidelines, etc.?
That's something we don't have right now. Like, I don't know if, I mean, like, are you talking about a list of resources or like instructional materials and how to go about doing something? Or?
So I understand that that's not currently in play, but what I was wondering is that is it something that is of interest? Is there a possible abstract framework that could be set up where, depending on field, and I think you mentioned earlier that there's a different initiative that focuses more on plant biology, different people have their scientific communities to cater to, and so could we imagine or conceptualize an abstract framework where the said community would contribute towards a set of guidelines, and therefore the central repository to which data is contributed to from members of the community would conform to a preset set of guidelines, and that way at least folks within the community could reuse it more readily, have a set of expectations from the data that's available on a given repository, and sort of what sorts of computational or otherwise workflows they could design around the data set could be more easier to design.
Yeah, I would really like that as well. I thought maybe we could try to make these common data structures, and I think the first step would be maybe to ask people in ask the eLife community investors to fill out a questionnaire or something, asking what data they usually have in all their data sets. So what is the common data structure in their own data sets? And then maybe we can make distinctions. I mean, currently I don't really know how much overlap there is between fields, but I think we will be able to make a distinction then between fields, and for instance, I can imagine that for all people-related research, you would always have like age, stuff like that, and perhaps for plots you would have a similar thing, or for all things related to biology, or I don't know. So maybe I thought we could use the collective knowledge of the investors, and then maybe also when we can tease out these common elements or fields for which there are common elements, we could maybe just ask people if they want to be represented for their own field to create a structure. And we can then write a law or something about it for the is that easier?
Yeah.
In which we can just also paste links to these common data structures so that they can become more broadly available.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, you were going to say something, Bhavik?
So that sounds like a fantastic idea. The only follow-up to that that I would be interested in learning is, should this be an ECR or ECAG or eLife driven initiative, or should this be more of a platform that sort of eLife and broader resources provides, wherein the members, whether it's ECI or more broadly, put together their set of ideas, and there is a sort of semi-regular window for community members to opine upon. And then what that allows us to do is periodically update the set of guidelines. But once the set of guidelines are selected, then basically the expectation is that all sorts of data reporting for publications that come to eLife or set of journals that subscribe to that set of guidelines will conform to those expectations. And then what this does is it, for instance, if I mean, we are scientists, right? We get things wrong from time to time, and so then if these norms need to be updated, there's a clock on it, which every 3 years, 5 years, every year. I don't know how frequent this is going to be, but at least the community gets to give their input. The guidelines get updated based on newer data formats coming up and so on. And so it's more of a dynamic, a living ecosystem rather than a static set of guidelines. Because every time we commit to a static set of guidelines, what we end up doing is there always will be growling about, oh, I don't like this data format or that or whatever. But then we are allowing the community to give their input periodically.
Yeah, I think if we were to write a blog about this endeavor, maybe we could just use links in the blog towards the field-specific guidelines. Maybe in a Google Doc or something that you can more easily adapt. And perhaps also, we aren't going to change the whole scientific universe in a year probably, but we can maybe start a pilot then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and therefore, the more living the ecosystem is, once we get the ball rolling, even if it's a couple of steps in the right direction within our year of being ambassadors, the system keeps going, the ball keeps rolling. Because even if we don't get the guidelines exactly right, because it's a living set of norms, then they can change over a period of time, and then hopefully we can get to the right consensus from time to time.
Yeah. And obviously, I would prefer it if it goes really broad beyond eLife as well, because it's not my field. for my uniformization of data, it would be nice if it could go beyond that. Yeah. I think one step at a time, and I think maybe also as I could prepare a presentation, perhaps as part of the one that Bradley already shared about how to implement these guidelines or something. Then people could also take it to their own departments and universities and present about it with no thresholds. Because if everybody were to make their own presentation about it, then it wouldn't be uniform anymore.
Yeah. So yeah, that's good. I think I like the idea of starting with like a survey of the community. I think we've done that before in the past. Last year, people have done a number of these. I think getting Korzak involved is important. She's one of the head people. She'll be able to help us with logistics of that. And then this is a pretty diverse community. I don't know what the statistics are, but it's much broader even than last year, which was actually pretty broad. So you'll get a number of different fields. In terms of like a framework or like an abstract model, I agree that we need to really kind of make this more abstract than like just something for a specific field. So like in terms of figuring out what people are doing or what their expectations are is important, but also having like there is also literature on this, So, people have kind of thought about this already. So there are guidelines. Whether people actually know or aware of them or use them is a different issue. So, like, there have been papers.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Making people aware of it.
Yeah. So, you have like even like standards that exist in different fields. But, in one field where you have a standard, other fields it may be inappropriate, or it may be, that people don't use them for whatever reason. And so that's a thing that maybe we can overcome, is to kind of bridge those disciplinary boundaries and, expectations, and say, this is a good, if we can kind of get a handle on how people are using them, what people kind of want in, this sort of thing, then maybe we can say, maybe it's even like, you think of it as a grassroots type of approach where, people have kind of issued edicts from above and said, these are the best practices because, it fits our needs, and it fits, if you're a scientist in a huge lab, this works best for us, but it might not work best for everyone.
Exactly.
To be able to figure out what people actually need in terms of data sharing. And so I think some of the stuff that we've done already, I can't have some more information about that in these materials, but we'd have to go back and check and see what we have, and then getting people's input, and then we can actually come up with, we have to kind of position it in terms of, being sort of field agnostic, but not being so far out that people don't find that useful. So
yeah.
Makes sense.
For secondary use as well to have different formats, because I can't imagine a situation where I would want to reuse both my own data on parent-child attachment relationships and plant biology data. So it makes sense that those data sets don't match, and they probably don't have to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it would be nice if it would match as much as possible. So, well.
Yeah. Well, they're like common formats for storage. So you have things like XML or JSON, which are like formats which people use to sort of encode data. So if you have like a set of data where you have like a bunch of variables and a bunch of condition or cases, and you want to be able to make that available to other people, generally we have computational formats for that, which people, if you recognize it, it's machine readable, but also people can use it. It's not closed, it's open, so people can read it on their machine. And then there's also like metadata, where you have things that are common tags, things that are people can recognize that mean something. So when you annotate the data, you want to describe it to people. You don't want to just say, well, this is a variable. You code it with some obscure title, and then no one can read it. Usually, there are schemes where people kind of describe the variable a bit, and those sorts of things are important. But that's kind of at the level I think people are thinking in terms of like data sharing, is that make those things available. And then the question is do they actually do that in practice? And then that's another thing too. It's like, it's not all like format and best practices even. It's like, how do you incentivize people to do it? Because people ultimately, you can give them practices, but how do they actually, that's where the communities comes in too. Is, if you have a community of people who are doing this, where you can ask people questions about it that don't have, that might be something that would be, that people setting up the standards wouldn't even think about. If you don't know how to do something and it doesn't make sense to you, you won't do it.
So along those lines, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but along those lines where you said, there are these computational frameworks. For example, I'm familiar with the JSON file format, but there are these norms, and then there's a little bit of distribution in terms of whether people follow the guidelines or follow specific data formats or put in all the metadata tags and so on. To sort of address this distribution and sort of get improved compliance towards whatever standards are for a given field. Would you think that if we did what we were talking about a few minutes ago, where we took community input in terms of setting up a set of norms for a given field, then we could get at least eLife, hopefully a broader set of journals to agree to those norms, and therefore, by definition, every paper that's submitted to the journal for publication needs to meet or exceed the given set of norms. And then, because these norms keep getting updated from time to time, then there's an incentive for journals as well to sort of subscribe to these set of norms that are defined, because what that allows them to do is, in terms of formatting manuscripts from going from one journal to another, they are incentivizing improved reproducibility and so on and so forth. So as long as it wasn't an edict given by the three of us or the eLife editors in chief or whatever, but is something that was brought together with input from the broader community, with a period open for community to opine upon, to drop a set of norms saying, oh, these might be not useful or expensive or hard to set up, versus these might be more useful, and so on and so forth. But then once that document is ready to go for a given field, it stays for a given amount of time, and hopefully that encourages different journals to subscribe to these data norms.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's down the road, though, in terms of like getting journals to adopt it.
Right.
I think a first step would be like to get people to elicit feedback. I also think that like with eLife, you're kind of at the root of a journal already, so I think they're very open to like, letting us sort of work with eLife, with their organization, to make this, because they have their own ideas about this, and I don't know too much about it because it's internal to eLife. But like, if we get the ball rolling, say, Quora might be able to help us get some, more, bit more of a two-way street between their, organization and the ambassadors. So I mean, there might be a way to like, at some point, like write a paper where you propose these points, like a white paper or something where you propose these standards, because there are actually a lot of people who have proposed data standards. So, journals might adopt something, but it's like, it takes them a long time. Bless you. It might take them a long time to get to the, to something that they find to be commonly acceptable, because there probably are a number of people who have written papers on, norms and standards and best practices, but then, ours, like the absolute best. If eLife takes an interest in what we're doing in that area, they might sponsor, some development on their platform of this type of thing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's worth investigating. But I think the path of least resistance is to, maybe kind of leverage what we have with eLife, and then maybe write a paper like laying everything out, and then we can maybe get it. I don't know if eLife would publish it, but definitely have it highlighted somewhere. And then, if journals think it's a good idea, maybe I don't know where you would go from there, but it definitely, I think getting adoption is the hardest part of that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That is the real challenge. Yes.
Well, you have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
So.
I think there is a real need for this, because there's much more secondary data use than there used to be over the last decade or so. And I think also most of the people who are in the eLife community, well, in the early career ambassadors, they should be up for this, because it is probably in their future that they will use secondary data. So yeah, it's like a gift to your future self, maybe, as well.
Yeah, I think so. And then, of course, we also have the different other modes of education. We have, we can do things like produce videos, or we even have digital badges, which is something I mentioned in the proposal, which is what they call micro-credential.
Yeah.
And I don't know did I share that folder of talks with, or it's like I created a folder where I have a bunch of PowerPoint presentations, and I'm kind of assembling things. Let me see if I can make a link. I don't know if you have access to it, but anyways, I can't get to the. Let's see if I can open this up. Trying to get to the chat window. I'm not able to do that right now. Anyways, I can send this later. Anyways, it has like, am I still sharing my screen, by the way?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So it's this folder that I have open right now, and it has a number of different lectures in it. There's a lecture called Badge System, and that shows how, like, basically it demonstrates what a micro credential is. This is someone in my organization who's taken an interest in this, and they've developed these little badges where you can award people badges, which are little credentials. It's just little bites of curriculum. So you have to earn them. You have to satisfy requirements. So you have like these badges here, it just has a name, and then you would click through, and it might, the whole badge is structured where it asks you a series of questions. And so the questions are, something that you can do pretty easily online. It's like a practice thing where I say, okay, I want you to go and find some references on this topic in data reuse, or I want you to work through this this standard. And then they would do this, and then they would submit what's called evidence. And so the evidence is like a screenshot or like some piece of writing or code or something that would allow you to, prove that you can do this thing. So like in this case, we have badges in this organization for what they call muscle modeling. And so in this case, it's a simulation of muscle activity. So there are 3 pieces of evidence to this muscle model builder badge. And you have like, it's, basically it's all oriented towards this, running the simulation. You set the simulation up, you install it, and then you run a test, and then you get this badge. And then, you might get another badge for going a little bit farther than that and saying, okay, I'm going to earn this as a prerequisite. And then now I'm going to earn this badge where I run, I actually do some things with the simulation. So, they build upon themselves. And it's just a way to like get people, and it's very practice oriented. So you're able to, in this case, you have GitHub best practices, which is where you go to GitHub and you set up an account and you run everything. You just show that you can demonstrate that you can use GitHub. So they're little pieces. When you go into the badge, it's like you have different questions that are, oriented towards the problem. You do this activity, and then it shouldn't be too hard for them to do. But once they do it, they can submit some evidence or proof that they did it. And then they submit it, and you review it, and then it should be, you should be able to identify, experts in that community. So like, if someone earns this badge, then, it's like a way for them to say, oh, I mastered this skill. And hopefully, they'll be able to apply those things to their work. So it's very practice oriented. You don't throw a bunch of best practices at them and say, here, go do this. You actually engage them with the things, and you say, well, we'll run through an example, and then I want to see, at the end, can you produce this figure, or can you produce this, outcome, and then, they're rewarded for it. So it's one thing that I've been working on towards, with other people on that end. That's something that people can contribute to building if they're interested.
Yeah, just wondering, where do you earn? I mean, you earn the badge, but where do you display the badge?
So in this example, this is Badge List. So there's a platform called Badge List where the badge is displayed within that community. But I think the badges can also be displayed in other communities. And I'm not sure how it works, like in other communities, like transferring the badge. But that's something that, like in this example that I'm showing you, this platform Badge List has, has a setup where you're in the community, you have a profile, and then you have your badges listed.
So you could just copy a link of that onto your CV or something.
Yeah, you can do that. There are other, they're also, I think you can post them to social media. I'm not sure what the state of the art is in terms of, displaying badges, but if that's something that people really, started to embrace, that could be done where, there's, a community badge Hall of Fame or something. It's just a way to show that people can do these things, identify people who may be more knowledgeable than you in something, etc. So
sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah. Every time I show this to people, they get excited, but it's the key is to create, and the only thing is, you just, once you get what you want, you create some content. You have to come up with lessons for people and it's practice based. So it's how would I have them actually implement this in real life? So, you might give them a data set or something to play around with and then come up with a solution to it. So, yeah.
We could also make a badge for adhering to those templates that you're going to develop.
Yeah. Let's see. There we go. I was trying to figure out how to get back to the main area here. Okay. So then that's the badges idea. Then if I go back to okay, let me go back to this this proposal. So I guess, where are we here? What are the expected outcomes of your initiative? So this is where we kind of put down what our outcomes are or what we expect. This is an area we maybe need to rewrite a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how you want to rewrite it. I would suggest if you want to go through and propose changes or propose points. At this point, I think it's if we have 5 points, but I think we can either consolidate them or change them around so that they make more sense. And then that's up to you guys too. What do you think is more or less out of this list, or even the things we've discussed today? What are the things you think are the most important to highlight?
Well, I think in terms of what we talked about with the the common data structures and asking the other community ambassadors to for their input on the data structures. I think that's the second one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really well developed as a point, but it's basically the second one. Well, I mean, it's like develop a data structure for sharing and recycling. They didn't mention anything about input from the community, though.
No. I can rewrite that point if you'd like.
Okay.
So we might be nearing, excuse me, I don't know if people have other commitments at the end of the hour, but in the interest of keeping things going here, I think we have a little bit of momentum. Do you think it's helpful to put together like a shared Google Docs, so people can edit it, whenever simultaneously, whatever, and then once we agree upon the writing, we can come back here and just paste it here, or should we just have a conversation here on Discourse, or what would be the best way to edit? I don't know, suggest changes or whatever.
Yeah, why don't I just throw this into a Google Doc and then I'll share the link, because I don't know, what your access is to this. So it's like, I think it's probably good to just do that, and then we can like expand this a little bit too in terms of the points.
Right, because I think in Discourse, I don't think, I mean, I don't know about you, but at least I didn't have access to, editing anything that you've already posted. So it would be like a linear sort of comments after comments here in Discourse, which might be a little bit difficult to read easily.
Okay.
I think we can rewrite it to an initiative and then ask if it can be an initiative, right?
Yeah, they had said that.
Perhaps if we are the only 3 participants in this initiative, then the 5 points may be a bit too much.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. Like, I just put them down as like, kind of, these are things that are there. But like, I think, we should probably try to like, maybe condense them down to like 3 points, maybe. But then like, have it maybe more like information packed. So like these point 2 and point 3 aren't very terribly informative, but I just put them down because I wanted to see where we'd go with that. But I think we can refine those, and then once we have that, I think when people come to it and they see the points, they can say, "Oh yeah, that's something I can contribute to."
We'll get some people.
This is fantastic. This is a good starting point. Thank you for putting this together. We can certainly edit and improve upon and so on. But this was really nice. I think we got together because of the starting document. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for now. I was gonna talk about contributing via GitHub, but I'm not gonna get into that right now. When we get more people, maybe we'll talk about that. But that's something that can be done later. I think right now we can collaborate in Google, and I assume that you're not able to exit. Have you ever used the eLife Ambassadors Drive? I don't think.
Yes. I think we have access. Yeah. We have access.
Well, I'll just share everything on that. I have a folder there already. I'll just share it in that folder, and then I'll share the links in a message. So
that sounds fantastic.
Yeah. And then you're free to add if you guys have any like presentations or other files that you want to share for this thing, for the initiative. Feel free to add them to that drive, and then we'll talk about them in another meeting later.
Okay. Should we spend like the last few minutes on a timeline, maybe?
Sure, yes.
Because we only have until May, I think, right?
Next May. Yeah, I think.
It sounds quite extensive what we are planning. So perhaps it's wise to think about that.
Well, we can. Yeah, I mean the initiatives usually like they can go beyond the end of the program. It's just that we'd like to get probably something, get some momentum, to make it sustainable before May.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that would be ideal.
Yeah.
I think, well, for, at least for me as well. So I think if we want to ask for other community ambassadors for input, perhaps the summer holidays won't be the best time. Or do you disagree with that?
For what?
For well, the summer period is not the best time to ask for input. Or is it?
Yeah, I think that would be a good time. I think a lot of people are, maybe they're probably more available than they are during the rest of the year. But
Do you think so?
well, maybe it depends. Some people go vacation. Some people ensconce themselves in science. So it's never really. But I think there are people who. I think people are basically in the program year round, so they're at least aware of what's going on. So
yeah. Okay. So maybe then we should try to I was just thinking about developing this questionnaire to ask for input of the ambassadors. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe we should just work on the document first and then talk about this at a later time.
I think that's a better idea. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So then, when do we want to have the document finished? Because that's.
Well, let's see. Today's the 7th. Maybe by the end of the month. Is that too soon? Okay.
Yeah. I do have to say that I will be at the end of the month. I'm going to have a holiday and a conference, etc. Until July 23rd. So I won't be available during almost 4 weeks.
So when do you leave?
The 27th.
So should we aim to finish this before then?
If possible, yes.
Okay.
Are you available during that period that I'm not available?
I'm available in July.
Yeah, we are going to be around.
Yeah. Because if we post the initiative and then nobody's responding to people, responses, then it's not.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I'll be around and Bhavik will be around, and maybe we'll pick up a couple other people too. So, but I mean, yeah, I think that's good to have the document as the first priority, and then have that done by the end of the month.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if when we want to meet again. Do you think we need to meet before this
deadline? So I think on the document we can work remotely and edit simultaneously and so forth. And then once we are sort of semi-happy with the draft of the document, maybe we can do a quick chat to finalize it and give it final touches before we call it done.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
Well, it's a bit difficult to plan with the time difference, but it wasn't too difficult to plan in our schedules, right? So it didn't take that long.
Is this time convenient for both of you?
For me,
what time is it where you are?
Where I am, it's 10 a.m. Sorry.
Okay.
Where I am, it's now 4 p.m.
It's 8 a.m. where I am, so we could, I don't know if you want to, if we could meet later, earlier, or probably not earlier, but not for me. Yeah, I'm at 8 a.m. here, yes.
Okay, yeah. At the beginning or now?
What do you mean, like?
Beginning of the meeting or now?
Oh, no, now it's like 9 o'clock, but at the beginning it was 8 o'clock, so.
Oh, so that's not that different. Mine was 9 a.m. beginning.
Okay, all right.
So I'm the problem here.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's you. I don't know if you don't mind meeting in the evenings or if that's off limits.
Sometimes, yeah, but not all the time. I have a little daughter, so she has to go to bed, etc.
Oh yeah.
At night, so there are a couple of hours that I can't be available.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. We can set up another doodle to figure this out.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it then, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, this was fantastic. I really enjoyed the first call, and I look forward to more calls and contributing to this. And this seems like we seem to have identified the need, and hopefully we can contribute a little bit towards pushing the ball on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, sounds good.
Sounds good. Well, thanks for meeting.
Yeah.
And
well, if you place it on the Google Doc, then we can contribute.
okay. Yeah, we'll do.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Have a good day, everyone. Now.
Everyone, talk to you later.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.